Well, let's go now to psychologist and broadcaster Emma Kenny. Emma, thank you so much for joining us. We're just hearing about the general issues surrounding cults and what sort of governments and councils and so on can do about it. But coming back to Alex Batty and what he will be going through, given that he's missed those normal teenage years, he's missed all that socialisation, he hasn't had any friends, he hasn't been to school, what sort of issues will that throw up for him now?
I think the major one is just grief, because even though it seems that he's somebody who's felt to some degree a level of love from his mother, and he's had certain levels of consistency because of other people who've come into his life, the truth is he's missed a huge amount of the UK experience and he's never going to get that back. And the formative years, we all know how formative it is when you're meeting peers in your high school and you're connecting and socialising. So being denied that, no matter what the intention, is going to lead to him having those moments of reflection that are going to be deep and that are going to be very thought-provoking and probably very painful at times. Having said that, I also think he comes across like a very resilient, very authentic individual who's very full of autonomy. And the likelihood is he'll use that resilience to move forward in his life. It's how he's cradled now between what was and what is. He's done this of his own volition. And to have that level of self-assuredness and confidence at his age and to do that by himself, we can't lose sight of what an incredible young man he is for doing that.
Indeed. And how do you acclimatise someone like Alex, you know, to a world of which he knows nothing? I mean, as I said...
He's never even had a phone.
Exactly. He's never had a phone, hasn't had any friends to speak of. And I keep saying I'm pretty transfixed by that picture, that footage of him looking out through that window at a city. He's never seen a city. How do you acclimatise Alex, a kid like Alex, to a world that he's been deprived of, really?
Just with a lot of love and support. I mean, I think one of the clear realities of his life is there is a foundation of support. He's got very loving people in his life. They're going to be able to help him acclimatise to every new situation. He can't make up for what he's lost, but it isn't as if he's lost everything, because he's gained so much as well from what he's done, where he's been, what he's gone through. It's about young people essentially catching up in this sense and placing himself with other peers, getting opportunities to just have those classic relationships that he's going to want to have at his age. But also, like I said, not losing sight of the fundamentals of what he actually learned, because I think one of the things that's very easy to do in this circumstance is say, that's terrible, that's tragic. At the end of the day, you're a victim. I don't think he sees himself as a victim. And I think we have to be careful about the language that we use towards him, because if he wants to adapt to his new situation in the UK, he wants to be seen as a young teenager with his life ahead of him, not as a victim of circumstance who's had his past stolen from him, because the way he reframes that is going to be a resilient level or a level of victim situation. And I think that he's shown that he's incredibly bright, incredibly creative, very capable, and hopefully in the future these wounds will feel like they've healed and he will move on to have the life that he dreams of, that he's obviously dreamt of.
And Alex, he's clearly, we talked to our previous guest about this, but he's clearly carrying a lot of guilt. I mean, you know, we would all think probably misguided guilt, but totally understandable, about the fact that he feels he's going to have got his mother and grandfather in trouble because he went to great lengths to cover his tracks so the police couldn't find them because he knew that they would be arrested. And one of the quotes that really struck me in the Sun exclusive was when he was taken to the police, which he didn't want to go to, and then he realised the penny dropped, that therefore he was going to be getting his mother into trouble. And he said, describing that moment, he said he was in bits on the floor because he was thinking, a swear word, I shouldn't have said anything. They fingerprinted me. They were sending photos to my grandmother and so on. So, and of the whole interview, that's the only moment where he said that he was in bits, and it was because of what he thought was going to happen to his mother. And I wonder how that guilt will psychologically affect him.
Absolutely. I think one of the most challenging things, as your prior guest was talking about before regarding the coercive control, and I'm not saying that I have enough information to believe that he's been abused or coercively controlled, because he said that he was free to leave. But let's just take that example. What you're saying is absolutely true. The guilt that victims feel they love people who harm them. We see this throughout relationships because somebody isn't harmful 100% of the time. They're usually harmful a tiny bit of the time. The point is they're still a victim and they have a conflict because they love the person that inevitably they have to tell the truth about in the end if they want to escape. So managing that guilt and managing the grief associated with the loss that he's endured, that's going to be quite treacherous for him. And also, the fact is, there's no winners in this situation. Yes, he gets his life back. Yes, he gets a future he absolutely 100% deserves. Yes, his grandmother gets to be with him again. But he also has to manage the loss, ultimately, of his mother. And that is something that anybody would struggle with, let alone a 17-year-old young man who's managed to navigate Europe, essentially, to escape, and now has to manage the ramifications of that. That's very challenging for anybody.
The loss of the mother is, as it were, is going to be exacerbated very soon because the British police have now launched a full criminal investigation into this, I suppose I should say, alleged abduction, but it's not much alleged about it. That's going to be difficult for him, isn't it? Because the police are going to put pressure on him. But so far, he has said, I'm not telling you where my mum is. I don't want to get her in trouble. And indeed, his grandfather. When the police sit him down, how do you get him through that? Because they're going to put pressure on him and say, come on, Alex, you've got to tell us. That's going to be psychologically difficult for him, isn't it?
Absolutely, because essentially for him, he likely doesn't see that a crime has been committed. If things haven't been terrible for him or treacherous for him, he's probably not going to mirror the reality that is being seen by other people, which is that he was essentially allegedly abducted, certainly wasn't meant to be in the care of his mother. There were issues there, and she took him unlawfully. So now, like it or otherwise, she is a criminal, and Interpol, etc., are going to seek her out, and ideally they will bring her back and charge her because of those crimes. For him, he will see things in a much more black and white sense, which is a criminal is somebody who does something maybe violent against you. He will have that understanding that so many of us have. When you draw it into the familial experience and when you have strong loving feelings towards an individual that might not be an ideal parent, but as he said, is not a terrible person, that's conflicting. And that conflict is where the problem is. So as much as the authorities are pushing and pressing him, they're basically asking him to betray in his mind somebody that he loves deeply, even though she's flawed, and ultimately somebody that he may not see as a criminal. So how they manage to help him adapt to the reality, that's something that they're going to have to get professional help with. And what I would say is as well, his support network is probably going to be the most important part right now within his world. No matter who your therapist is, no matter who psychologically helps you, the real people who enable you to move through these situations are people who deeply love you. And fortunately, he has that structure in his life.
And of course, the number one person in his life is the grandmother that he has done all this to get back to. And the grandmother who's kept his bedroom the same, and his bed is far too small. Now he's 6 foot tall, he says, and his bed's now too small for him. Again, a really, really poignant bit of that interview. Emma Kenny, thank you so much for joining us on talkTV.
Lovely
this
pictures
afternoon.
of the granny and Alex meeting and hugging.
But she's a victim, as Emma was saying. She's a victim of this. She's been
so,
without her beloved boy all these years, and now she's got to put him back together.
They should have a
again.
great Christmas, though. That is a heartwarming story.
Yeah, it really is.